Welcome to this episode of the OTTRED Spotlight podcast. Everybody knows that at the start of every interview that I do here at Studio Red, I start by being grateful about the amazing people that I'm lucky enough to meet from all over the world in the different disciplines that constitute what creates the streaming arena. And one of those is connectivity and the world of telco. It's absolutely essential for the heartbeat of the organization to survive if transmission of all of the images and content that all of the producers are creating around the world are going to reach the screens and the eyeballs that they are desired for. The person that I'm going to be speaking to today is somebody that appreciates the texture of the connectivity environment and the undercurrent of the whole industry, possibly like nobody I've ever known before. Mary Nofan Karadsheh is the Director of Performance Management at Do, and she's here with me now in the studio at Studio Red to talk to me about her career, the things that make her what she is, and the complexion of the market and what it's going to look like in the future. Mary, welcome to the OTTRED Spotlight podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm really looking forward to exploring some of your background, some of what's made you who you are. And we've spoken before about the way that you were raised and some of the values that have become intrinsic to the fabric of your character, but then also how you've got to where you are from a career perspective. I think that that journey is quite important to what you've achieved, where you are now. And then also the things that really excite me is your view of the market, because anybody that's listening to this should prepare themselves over the next 45 minutes for a real education on the objective characteristics of the market that a strategist needs to consider when they're informing, advising, and helping to make decisions. Let's start off with your life. You're from Jordan.
Yes.
You were raised with some pretty clear values in terms of the DNA of who you are.
Yeah.
Give me and everybody else a feeling for, you were born, we're now in Studio Red. What happened in between?
Well, much happened. I would say it's a great to be here again. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. So I was born and brought in Jordan, and both of my parents were serving military. Hence, I would say the most entrenched value in me is discipline. We were raised to have discipline wherever we go and to accompany that with passion. So whatever we do, we always show discipline and passion. I have 4 siblings, and I've finished my major in BA in accounting.
Do you have brothers or sisters?
So I have 3 sisters and 1 brother.
Okay.
So we're 5. And both of my parents were heavily hands-on when it comes to raising, equally to anybody else. And I think that's one of my first blessings in life. And I really treasure their investment in us as people.
Yeah.
So post that, I finished my BA in University of Jordan. I finished accounting, and then I pursued my certification of CMA. It's a Certificate of Management Accountant from the US. I think that was a door opener for me in my career. And speaking of such, my background as a profession, I started in the aviation sector.
Okay.
I started in Royal Jordanian. We were looking at the fleet planning, optimization. And here I start to sip strategy slowly. Then I've joined for almost a decade the telco industry. I started with Omnia. At that time, it was considered the third operator and the challenger. The value of Omnia was we entered the market after a duopoly. So there was Zain and Orange. And at that time, it was quite a journey to really prove the growth of the market share and the market value for customers at that time. We were definitely trying to penetrate and serve the untapped market, whether it's in mobile or in fixed.
Yeah.
So that was quite a huge amount of my experience, and I'm also lucky to be there.
It's quite fascinating to hear that you started the professional chapter of your life in aviation. I Red Holt, my business, we've actually got a line of business that services that sector. And one of the things that I know from that experience is that decisions that get made in those types of businesses are huge. The ramifications in terms of production, decisions that get made, the schedules that get made, and then affect the whole cash flow of the business. And monetization is going to be a big thing that we speak about in a while. I would imagine that the degree of analysis that has to happen and the type of mind that you have to undertake that analysis has to be perfect in that sector.
So just to complement what you're saying, I think that it was a 360 every day to look at every fleet optimization, whether it's cost, whether it's revenue, whether it's passenger, whether it's a triangle of a flight, and to pivot all the aspects, which is the cost and the volumes and the profitability, was quite, I would say, time consuming. And to be more in agility mood, more in a flexibility mood, to also look into the surrounding environment, whether it's political, whether it's economical, whether it's seasonal, whether it's a high season, low season. So there are a lot of factors in the aviation. It's quite an interesting industry, I would say.
I think so.
And it's doing very well. It was like the major carrier back then in Jordan.
So how did you go from aviation to telecoms?
So I was fortunate to join the dream team, they say, in Jordan. At that time, Omnia was about to launch. So we worked like 2 years pre-launch, and then I stayed there for another 5 years. We've worked into a lot of milestones, and we've witnessed more growth and celebration rather than challenges and dips. So one of the things that I would love to share as an achievement in Omnia is the LERIC model, and it's called the long-term incremental cost, where the operator goes to the regulator and they work on a synergy of determination rates, and that supports their margin levels of profitability. So at that time, we had the designation of working with the regulator on a 1-year project and ensuring that we set the business to success. And at that time, I think our achievement was about saving of 10 million Jordan dinars in a year. So that was huge. That was at my early stage of the career. And this is one of the things that I would really say it's a success story back then. Moving to Dubai, I think I was also fortunate to join one of the most prominent digital brands across the world, Virgin Mobile. At that time, we were also strongly entering a market of duopoly and a clear vision of digitalization, customer experience, value-oriented, flexibility, and monetization, of course, also is part of any strategy. And we'll talk about
Virgin is such a strong
later.
brand. You know, I can imagine when you're working out the strategy for an organization like Virgin to come into a duopoly, a strong thing to consider is actually what's the personality of our offering here? You know, how are we going to maintain our global brand, which is probably one of the strongest in the world for Virgin, in a market like this that's so heavily dominated by, you know, Du and Etisalat?
Actually, I would say the success recipe for Virgin Mobile easily was the experience. The experience and touching the tech-savvy kind of customers. People were thriving and thirsty for that kind of experience, to receive your SIM within an hour, and also to have value for money, to have 6 and 12 months plan. The whole brand gave an echo for the overall launch, and I think the dedication of the team, be it technical, be it digital, be it finance, be it branding, and of course the leadership there were one of the most great leaders I've ever met in my career. And for them, I tip my hat. I think leaders, and that's another topic by itself, when you're surrounded with the right culture, when you're surrounded with the right leaders, they just get the best out of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to ask you, what you've shared with us already is that you've been involved with 2 organizations at the very early stages.
Yes.
How did you find that kind of startup stage? Because that's something that, in my experience, people either love or hate. It ignites something within them, or they go, I would never want to do that again.
Brilliant. I love the question.
Yeah.
So thank you. I think one of my secret recipe of success is to keep challenging myself. I've thrived to grow. I thrive to learn. Nobody's perfect. And I have very ambition of growth. So I'm a catalyst, and I want to grow in a fast, mode. In Virgin and in Omnia, you're absolutely spot on. They were both of them a pre-launch team, baking the recipe of pricing, channel strategy, profitability, budgeting, putting the market and pivoting all the indicators, whether it's macro indicators or micro indicators, pivoting the strategy with the balanced scorecard, ensuring everybody is set to grow and to succeed, giving people levers and ensuring that everybody is connecting in day-to-day, in a weekly view, in a monthly view, in a quarter review. I think seeing numbers growing from zero to hero is what I love to see in businesses. When you have no market share, no volume share, and after 5 years, you're in a 25% market value. That's, for me, is fulfilling. This is where I really feel I contributed it twice. And the whole team was in the same era, in the same energy, whether back in Jordan or whether in Virgin Mobile, and for surely in the existing team that I have now. We're blessed always and fortunate to have the right caliber surrounding us. And this is vital for growth.
So Mary, one of the things that we got when we were doing the research before this was a key point of your DNA, your personality, is to love what you do. And in a role like you've got now, the footprint of accountability for being the director of performance management of a company as big as Do is massive. The number of data points that you must have to assimilate, identify, and secure more of on a daily basis is huge. Like, how does that feel on a daily basis with your organization, your team, with that accountability in Do?
Yes, so actually it's a big accountability. You're absolutely spot on. And the way we make it throughout the day is that we just come and we love what we do. And they say, if you do what you love, you'll never say that you have a job. So this is how do I feel personally about coming to work. And I forget that there's a huge responsibility when I wake up from the bed. I will just taking myself with full energy to just pursue what is needed. So what we do in Do is actually linking the whole business, be it commercial and finance and strategy, ensuring that the business is set to grow, ensuring that everybody has the right levers for growth, and linking the micro and the microeconomics indicators. So we keep an eye on the IMF, on Dubai forum agendas. We keep an eye on the PwC releases. Those are our trajectories, and those are the data points that we keep looking at. So the GDP of be it telco or non-telco, oil or non-oil, be it the consumer confidence, the PMI, the purchase manager indicator, the population growth along the visitor indicators of how much of visitors is expected to come to Dubai, the digitalization that the UAE government has clearly set for the overall business being 100% of foreign ownership, that anybody could own a business 100%. They are legitimizing everything and making sure that everybody can go into a growth story, and that impact our SME business. So the overall KPIs that we look has to translate into our financial KPIs, into our financial aspiration, into our market share, into our market growth, and everything has to go in an orchestrate kind of a thing. So we all follow the regime of growth, if I would say. And the main highlights of a day would be the continuation of monetization. So I think this is what we thrive toward every day. How can we really be catalyst by ourselves, and how can we organically and inorganically grow?
So what fascinates me about that is monetization is clearly a key topic. You and I have talked before, and this is why I invited you to the podcast, because a couple of points. Number one, it fascinates me that you've got this team in Do that are looking at that range of things that you've just mentioned, GDP, population growth. I know you look at political agenda, what's happening on a macroeconomic basis. And I also know you didn't just mention it, but I know because we've spoken about it before that, you're looking at the local government's agenda towards 2070. It's not just about growth over the next 3 to 5 years, which typically in many other parts of the world would be a very comprehensive strategy.
Correct.
But you're looking at it with a much longer road towards what success really constitutes with all of the arithmetic and analysis that you're doing within your team on behalf of Do.
Yes. So, see, any strategy, if it's set for success, it has to tick, number one, your revenue growth. So 40% of a strategy has to be driven by your revenue top line. And that's from the GSMA reports, and that's proven also. The other 30% has to be a combination of you dropping your long-term CapEx investment and your efficiency in your operating expenses. And definitely not less than 20% in your customer experience. So the strategy has to fall into your financial P&L and also tick your transformation agenda in order to serve the customer and be niche. So ticking and looking at all of this, pivoting all of this in a very clear way has to be for a long-term perspective. So when you look at Dubai agenda, there has been multiple ways when Dubai has mentioned that the population of 3.5 million will be doubled in 2040. Another example, the population, the visitors that would come to Dubai has been on a range of 11 million in 2011. And the aspiration for 2027 is to be 33 million. So that's a triple scale. So everything is going to a trajectory of a growth. It's unprecedented level of growth that goes hand in hand with the macro indicators and the micro indicators. And when the government as an orchestrator is facilitating all the background for investors and for the businesses, then the business owners and the customers and be it the sectors coming from retail, health, and insurance, tourism, and telco and non-telco.
I can only imagine the type of numbers that you must have to consider when it comes to the kind of CapEx provision for the type of growth, just from an infrastructure perspective, that Dubai is forecasting, and then what the cascade of implications are when it comes to the growth ambitions to ride that wave, that trajectory that you mentioned, to keep up with the demand and in fact ahead of the demand.
Correct. You always have to be ahead of the train because it's a hugely, highly competitive business and you can't look back. If you waste time looking back, the train will be already passed and then the loss will be bigger. So you have to be always agile in your processes, in your thinking, in your way of implementing even your plans has to be super agility.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about monetization.
Yeah.
And I know that you've got some really well-defined opinions on the things that influence effective monetization. We've talked about digitalization as well. Unpack for me your view on why that is a prerequisite for successful monetization and to future-proof a company's ability to continue to monetize what it does.
See, the simple theory of any customer, and that's also proven by studies and experience, if we will say, that a digital customer will stay minimum longer than a non-digital customer of 1x. If a non-digital customer will stay for a year, a digital customer will stay for 2 years. That by itself serves a P&L profitability. So when you acquire a customer and he's willingly downloading an app or registering for a service, and by himself he's putting his digital bank card, he's willing to subscribe to your subscription, be it for 6 months, for 12 months, for 24 months, he's willingly giving you the right and the consent that he wants to be part of that service. So This is different than you go into the traditional way of onboarding a customer. And when you have a digital customer, you would easily, using the AI and the Gen AI, study his profile, know when to upsell him, when to cross-sell him, when he's about to leave, when to prevent him leaving, when to engage him to another service that you could have, when to take him to a journey from your core business to your beyond the core business. So a digital customer serves you time and saves you time. So having digital customers is the best thing you could have. And I think digital businesses will have a higher startup of a return over investment versus a traditional business.
It's interesting listening to your experience of Virgin when you were talking about why Virgin was so successful. You know, the experience, the journey, the digitalization of everything that they do, and now hearing how fundamental that belief is and why that's a fundamental belief of your philosophy on successful monetization. What about the convergence of different services into the theme of digitalization? You know, now we've got fintech, medtech, edtech. When a large organization that could potentially act as an aggregator for all of those things for the consumer market has the opportunity to do so, is that strategically advantageous? Is it something to pursue, or is it premature in terms of being over-ambitious?
See, of course, the inorganic catalysts and the hyperscalers serves your ecosystem. You no longer can be predominantly dependent on your core business. You have to have a one-stop shop, if we may say. Your app have to serve your customers in terms of lifestyle, core business. You could also serve them insurance bonds. You can allow them to transfer money back home. You can offer gaming. You can offer a lifestyle kind of engagement. They can also buy their grocery. So it's a one place where a customer could go and just live his life. So this is how digital should step and look into that era.
Is there a way for a strategic mastermind, that's you, to put a weighting on all of those things, from the tactical level must-haves, buying your groceries, you know, right up to the, you know, the big things in somebody's life, like the big financial decisions, a mortgage, etc. Is there a leaning more towards pursuing as an aggregator one more than the other, or is it just we need to get our arms around as much of this digital lifestyle as possible?
Actually, these decisions should be taken at a higher scale. So it has to go hand in hand with the ecosystem and the infrastructure and the strategy of the business itself. And you have to have the skill set ready. You have to have all your technical capabilities ready. So yes, it's the right way to move forward. Yes, this is in the back of the MWC that has been done in Barcelona. It was very vivid and very clear that the AI, the transformation, digital, and the ecosystem of inorganic catalyst, having all the beyond core, it's becoming the norm of the business. And that's something everybody should pursue of ensuring that's available for the customers.
It would be remiss of me, as this is called the OTT Spotlight Podcast, OTTRED Spotlight Podcast, to not ask you about your perception of content delivery, you know, the OTT and streaming services, and what your perspective is of where they fit into this spectrum of different things that are important to a consumer, and what they lend as well, I suppose, to the attractiveness of a telco proposition, because telcos are a huge part of that economy in terms of, you know, being an aggregator onward to the end consumer.
Of course. So I believe personally and professionally that the content is something that is niche. You have to be relevant to the customer. You have to speak the same language, speak the same interest, and you have to be also affordable. And definitely you have to ensure that the experience is seamless. If you miss any of those, then the recipe of success might not tick. If you have the relevant content and you're affordable, but your experience is not wow, then you'll not hit the top of the arch. You have to master everything. So it's like also a 360. The content is something that's really appreciated by the customer, but then the customer wants a full-fledged of success. I want it relevant for me, I want it affordable, and I also want it to be seamless. I don't want to keep looking for what's relevant. I don't want to pay so much. I want it to be as per my league or my interest or my age group. And I have to be sold or upsold the right content for your customers.
With where we are now, with the kind of rapidly emerging and unfolding landscape when it comes to the digital economy, and that includes all of the things that we're talking about at different stages of maturity and monetization, what's your feeling about how far ahead you can accurately forecast? Because you've mentioned AI a few times, generative AI generally as a topic. My perception of that, my posture on it is that actually that must limit somebody in your shoes, whereas you might have been able to do strategic forecasting previously 18 months, 2 years, 5 years ahead. What's the effect of AI when you're working in a digital economy on how much is going to change in 9 months?
Actually, the overall market is very dynamic. To say no less, it's super dynamic. So you have to be also on the go. It's not that it's the algorithm that you feed and then things will pop up the right way. You have to be hand in hand with the latest things that's being launched by your competitor, or the latest thing that as you've mentioned, the aggregators of content. So you can ensure this is fed into your proposition. You have to be reflecting on the recent trends of the business itself, whether the customers are paying on time, whether the customers are dropping, whether the customers are upsold or churning out. So those are hard to be all fed into and fixed algorithm. You have to be close to the numbers in order to have a good, I would say, a moderate forecast that could always be close to the reality. So to answer your question, we always have a quarter review on what we think that the market should have behaved, or we revisit our ambition to improve our future ambitions. And not to say the least that we try to look at 1 to 3 to 5 years, because this has to go also hand in hand with our investments, with our overall shareholders' interest, and with our customers' behavior. If the customers are moving towards a line of a business, we have to be ahead of the customers. So in order to allow them to feel the journey that has been seamless.
In your career, you started off with kind of financial motivation, the kind of finance stuff. That's naturally evolved, I think, and I could be wrong. It feels like that ability to analyze multiple data sets, calibrate variables, and come up with a range of different, it might be this, it might be that, in terms of strategic channels, has got you to this amazing point in your career where you're able to articulate everything that you're speaking to me about now in very understandable, succinct terms. What's your view of what's going to happen to roles like yours in the future, where being able to predict the future, not just create strategy, but predict the future, will evolve? Because I already hear some interesting job titles when it comes to people who have got abilities to do that, to almost look into the crystal ball of what monetization might look like in just 2 years, 24 months, because the world is changing so quickly. What's your view of, with the amazing career you've had so far, what companies like Do might need to consider going forwards in terms of, the way to actually frame up a role like yours in today's world?
Well, I love the question. So I think the mix. You have to have a solid financial background. You have to be number-oriented. Your acumen in reading numbers and linking things has to be very solid. And then you have to have always a commercial hat. And then you wrap a bow of strategy over that hat. So your mind is the driver, and you have a super financial background. You put a hat of commercial, so you understand the language. And then you say, oh, I'm a strategist. So you could really understand the future of the ambition of the business. I would say the recipe is really a consideration and courage. You have to always believe in the experience that you have. So you're always courageous in the opinions that you put on the table, versus a consideration of what is the market saying, what is the macroeconomist indicators are suggesting, what are my competitors doing, what is the best in class in other countries, similar countries, of course, doing, and what is the summits that's discussing that business or that industry, suggesting the future. So you tie up summits and microeconomics, agendas, IMF, PwC, the overall strategy of the company, and you work out what do you believe as a profession, what the numbers pivoting, what they are suggesting, and then listening to your customer voice, the customer echo in your head, and then linking that to the strategy and say, yeah, you know what? This is now making sense. This is now making sense. This is driving me there. So you have to be, I would say, super flexible. You have to be super open. You have to be I would say, agility has to be your day-to-day mode of operation. The MO has to be agility. You have to have agility and sipping it every day.
So let me ask you this question then. Are you an artist or a scientist?
I'm a mix of both. I used to be a scientist, but now I have to be an artist.
Why is that?
Because you have to also reflect your science in a nice way. You can't just throw numbers or business models or presentations. You have to work on the way you convey the message. You have to ensure that you cover it, you wrap it with consideration, with intuitive information, with relevance to the audience. So when we sit in front of a CFO, it's a different language and a tone and evidence versus when we sit versus our, I would say, peers or commercial heads. We have to select the right language, and that's an art by itself. But in both cases, you have to be a scientist.
I ask you that question because the feeling that I get about the work that you do and how passionate you are about it has increasingly involved, as you've matured, your intuition. And I think that in a way that feels to me like art more than science. You know, it's something that's very personal to an individual, and that inevitably comes out in the accent of your work. Would you say that's true?
Actually, it's more than true, because what really makes me feel good about myself is being real. I love to be real, and I'm not perfect again, but I thrive to a better version of myself every day. So every week, every month, every quarter, I was like, Mary, what is needed to be done? What did I miss? How can I be better? For the sake of me and for the sake of my kids and for the sake of the team and my peers, I try to challenge myself in order just to be a better version. And that will take definitely a long way.
Ongoing quest.
Yeah, it's an ongoing question.
There's a great saying that you might like, Mary, that I hold close to my heart as a leader within my own business, which is confident vulnerability. You know, if you accept, as you've just said, that you're not perfect, I know that I'm far from perfect, but I actually embrace that. You know, I'm confident about my vulnerability. In fact, it excites me. You know, that gives me my growth space.
Exactly.
It feels like that's the way that you view your room to optimize. What am I going to do with today? Let me ask you, what if somebody's listening to this or watching this and thinking that they're either already in a career to do with performance, growth, strategy, or want to get into that channel of work because it excites them for whatever they've heard you say? what would be the 3 key pieces of advice that you would give to them?
Well, the first on the top of my mind is always surround yourself with a great culture. Leaders that really believe in people management, in people growth. Culture plays a very important role for anybody's success.
You sound like you've had some good leaders.
I'm very fortunate to say the least. I would not only give them more than 65% of my growth goes to the leaders I've worked with. They have really invested in me, believed in me, and I'm fortunate to have many of them in my career, and I hope I continue to have great leaders around. So that goes for the first advice. The second is always seek your full potential within yourself. So always question yourself, is this the best I can do? I can do better. Never settle for less. Actually, I was texting my kids before I came here, and I was telling them, they were telling me something, and then I said, Mama, please always seek your full potential. And I was like, no, Mary, this is not the podcast.
Yeah.
So I think seeking your full potential is something very important, and to have a checkpoint between you and yourself. And definitely if you have mentor, that will be even merrier. So the third would be always have your values protected. Never lose your identity and protect your own values. That will always make you enjoy, that will always enable you to enjoy the road that you're walking. And you'll enjoy the surrounding also. So protecting your values is very vital.
Final question, Mary. If you could give some advice to the younger Mary, what would it be?
I think I should have run faster.
Why?
I took my time in multiple areas of my career, and I think I enjoyed too much of the experiences. I enjoyed too much of the challenges. As we've mentioned, in Omnia and in Virgin, there was a huge amount of fulfillment. I never regret, but I enjoyed it for too long, and I think I should have expedite my career path.
Mary Nafan Karadsheh, it's been wonderful interviewing you. I hope that people who have listened to this interview and watched it get as much from listening to your words as I've taken in your response to the questions. Thank you so much for coming to Studio Red.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. It was a pleasure, and I really enjoyed it equally.
Good.
Thank you.